It's Thursday night. We need to have we're live with Thursday nights.
Hey,
I want fireworks, digital fireworks, and spaceships flying everywhere.
We need something better. We got to up the game. Welcome to the Thursday Night live stream. Hello, everyone. Hope you guys are having a good week so far. We missed last week, so we missed everyone. Apologies. Life is busy. I know everyone here knows, and sometimes we just got to miss the stream. But we are all back together. We are whole, and we're going to talk the prequels tonight. We are going to talk news. I mean, there's a lot to talk about this week. When you miss a week, that's nice. You kind of get caught back up. Let's go around the triangle. Let's check in with everyone. Ben at the bottom. How's it going, my man? How's your week been?
Well, guys, it's pretty good. Not too bad. Doing some renovations around the apartment, repainting. But honestly, just happy to see you back. It felt like skipping 2 weeks is like, hey, where are the folks? We gotta talk some Star Wars. If there is moments where you wanna move away from watching Star Wars or reading Star Wars, you still kind of want to talk about it. And when you don't have your friends around, like, hey man, did you check out that trailer? What are you doing? This, this or that, and it's you miss some of that. Just discourse and talking to people and getting in the latest notes. Like, hey, what did you think about that trailer? I still haven't heard from you. So it's nice catching up. That's what I'm really looking forward to tonight, guys.
We are in that really cool time where there's always an opportunity to interact with your friends. We have so much technology to stay in contact. You know what I mean? Between phones, videos, live streaming, there's such a way to kind of interact with your friends. We are really fortunate. Jimmy, what's going on with you, man? How was life?
Oh, not much. Real quick. Shout out to my girlfriend in the chat. I love you too. I'm better. I'm no longer sick. So let's go. It was the worst thing ever. Don't get sick. Star Wars wise, I have fallen behind on a lot, but I'm hoping to pick that up. I plan to finish Midnight Horizon tonight. I've got 60 pages left.
Ooh, nice.
And then I'm going to try to get back into some comics. I've got Crimson Dawn issue 3 to get into.
Okay.
Shocking how fast that came out. And then the Han Solo comic. I really want to check it out. But we're here to talk about prequels. So I'm excited for that.
Well, it's interesting to me, as we sit here and as we talk about Star Wars, one thing that Ben has always been a big advocate of is taking your time when it comes to reading your reading material. It can get easy to get burned out if you're just trying to grind and speed run through books. So I have, in the last couple months especially, made a conscious effort to not drain myself, to take more breaks, which unfortunately means my book reviews are a little slower than they used to be. But it helps. I mean, it can get we had such a full year last year that, and geez, more and more coming out all the time, that it feels like sometimes it's hard to stop because you want to just keep it going. But I think it is good to kind of slow down a little bit. I mean, you don't want to, too much of a good thing, right? You don't want to have too much of your chocolate cake and then you're getting bloated and full.
Yeah, you want to be excited about it. You want to be thrilled, not just to relate the word and tell the rest of the world how you feel about it, but you want to be on it first, right? Like, hey man, that really impressed me. It's in a way, every Star Wars book, every comic, every show that you watch, it becomes part of your satellite, right? Part of your life. And it's if it's something that you kind of tried, like you mentioned, to eat too fast, and it's like, man, I don't ever want to do this again. It's like a Metallica Black Album. You probably have heard it so much if you're having that, you don't want to listen to it anymore. It's a great album, right? But who wants to hear it anymore? I've heard it gazillion times.
It's me every time I turn on the radio. I'm like, for whom the bell tolls again.
Okay. Right?
So speaking of too much of a good thing, there's something that we can't have too much of, and that is the prequels. And that's going to be a major conversation point of the night. We're going to talk about the prequels a lot and mix it in with some of the most recent Star Wars news as well. We're in that slower period. We've heard us talk about this a lot, where there's not quite the same quantity of crazy content that's coming out, which gives us some time to reflect on what's been done, what we love. And we're going to have just a long form conversation chat. I hope you guys are going to interact as well. I got a couple discussion topics to get us through the conversation. We'll be able to pull up any sort of info we need, graphics if you guys need it. But I want to start with a very simple conversation. Simple topic. Doesn't require any sort of prep. If you guys have been longtime followers of the channel, you know that I've done some podcasts with Timeline where we've talked about the prequel era. So if you've seen those, you might might be familiar. You might be familiar. Chat's going wild today.
Oh,
Might
my,
be
yeah, my
familiar.
buddy Hex he's having a great time.
That's it. Might be familiar with it. I just want to hear what you guys think of the prequel era. Specifically, what does it mean to you? When did you watch it? What was your kind of experience with it? A lot of folks might know, Ben and I's, but we're going to tell you guys anyway. Let's get it kicked off with Jimmy. You're probably
right.
I don't know if we've had this conversation with you.
I know I've mentioned it briefly, like off camera, and I went to my bookshelf and grabbed this just for this exact moment because this is where it started for me.
That's original VHS.
This is the VHS that my mom brought home when it was released in April of 2000 from Hollywood Video. Like,
that's awesome.
The sticker is still on that.
The whole trilogy?
No, because episode 3 was not released on VHS, but I do have 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6.
Oh,
that's cool.
I don't even remember that. Okay.
I think now I do know that this was released episode 3 was released on VHS in Germany, I want to say. So it is possible to get one, and I have considered it just for having it because they were cool. You know, they had like the characters on the side. They had Darth Maul on this side. On this side,
yeah, the packaging is
Obi-Wan
gorgeous.
and Qui-Gon.
Yeah,
it's awesome. I'm amazed I kept it in this good condition, even though it's pretty beat up. But it's 22 years old. How's that feel to say?
I mean, it looks vintage. Let's say not
for sure.
Vintage.
And it's like it's just cool to look at. So like I had that, and I've watched that tape so many times. I could tell you when all of the grains go on the screen, and it was just from there. Awesome. And I remember. I remember being in the theater as a kid getting ready to watch Monsters, Inc. when that came out. And we got a trailer for episode 2. You know, I'm a kid. I can't read everything. So like, there's all this stuff on the screen. I'm like, what's it say? My older sister's like, it says Star Wars episode 2. And I was like, there's no way.
Pull up that one more time. Let's look at that one more time.
For sure, man.
Yeah. People came late. That's
awesome. If you want to I don't know if you can make like my screen bigger or not, but like take a look. Like this is like one of the only ones. Like the rest.
Oh, let's see if we can
getting close there.
Let's see if we can make you the biggest.
So the rest of them just had a pure black or a white background. This one you could see. It's making this worse.
No, there we go. No,
this one you've got Darth Maul in the background just vaguely, and it was the coolest thing. Like, and you got the pod race on the back.
Yeah, that is great.
It's awesome, man.
They used the same backgrounds for the back of the VHS for the soundtracks when I bought them on CD.
Oh, really?
I had the soundtrack to each prequel, like exactly the same artwork, and it gave you. A lot of people complained back in the day because the actual tracks gave you the titles to scenes from the movie.
I was going to ask.
The soundtracks came out a couple of weeks prior to the movie. A lot of people knew stuff and like, hey man, don't buy the soundtrack because it like spoils things for you.
Yeah, sorry, camera froze. I was going to ask you, were you one of those people that had the ending spoiled because of the soundtrack?
No, you know what I did? I bought the soundtrack. I listened to it, but I refused to look at the back. Like, oh, not reading. Let me extract the CD. Yeah, I was smart about it, man.
That's so fascinating to me.
That is a fun little relic, Jimmy. I didn't realize you had that. I mean,
dude, the thing that makes me really sad though is because this came with a plastic casing over it. I remember it had like crinkles on the side. It was really hard to get out. I tore it off because I was 4 years old.
Hey,
I wish I could find another one, but I don't know how. I've tried.
I bet you could find like fan made, like aftermarket ones.
Well, and that's the thing, because like I found some like actual, like they make cases for VHS, but they're sleek, they're smooth. They don't have like all the wrinkles that it had in it. So I don't know if I just like made it up in my head, but like I've tried to find like brand new ones that they just don't have them on there. So I'm like, I don't know.
I mean, the point is there, as chat was saying, the Hollywood video is also a relic. That's kind of your double whammy there. It's crazy.
So like everyone grew up, like everyone that I grew up with, they were like, oh, Blockbuster. I was like, I've never been to a Blockbuster, but the Hollywood Video that I went to in San Diego, massive store.
Like Jimmy, I also saw Phantom Menace the first time at home. I remember I'd seen it at a friend's house when I was really young. And Attack of the Clones was my first theater Star Wars movie, if I'm recalling correctly. And then Revenge of the Sith, as we've talked about, was my favorite. And I think I was probably the perfect age for Revenge of the Sith. Like I was just old enough to get it, but not old enough to maybe be kind of jaded or a little bit, cynical about it. I just kind of took it for what it was. And absolutely, as you guys know, love that movie. The prequel era to me is Star Wars. Like it is what I think of when I think of Star Wars and theatrical experiences. We've talked about here before, the merchandise, the hype. It was so huge. And Ben's, echoed that same sentiment. The prequels were just insane when they came out. And I just could not believe, it was my first time in that kind of environment, right? I'd never seen that before. And I remember, like I see here, I remember my friends go to late night showings of that. I remember even though you knew how it ended, that's the big kicker there. It's like a movie, how it's going to end. The hype was just surreal for it. And I love those movies still. My favorite era of Star Wars. And so I think Jimmy and I, as we go through this discussion, are probably the target prequel audience, right? We grew up, we were just the right age for it. It's kind of our Star Wars. And so as we'll get into later, I think a lot of the reasons we see these characters returning is because my generation, my demographic is probably the number one consumer of streaming content and going to the theaters. And so a lot of the projects kind of catering towards us. It's kind of my read.
True.
But Ben might have a little bit of a different perspective on the prequels. Ben, take us back for those who don't know. What's your prequel experience?
So I first heard about new Star Wars in general at 95 or 96. It was a year before I left for America, right? And my father, it was summer day, and my father called me to TV. He's like, hey, Ben, check this out. There's some news about Hollywood. They're showing Disneyland. There's a segment on that. That's on Russian television. And they're making new Star Wars. And I said, Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. That's it. Star Wars is over, right? It's like, no, take a look. They're doing it. I didn't pay any mind to it. So apparently, as I'm gathering, what happened was they were talking about George Lucas gearing up because the information was pretty much widely known in 1995 that George is preparing his new trilogy. And as I very recently found out that he wasn't able to launch it when he wanted to, and scheduling behind episode 1 was far behind, he sort of started training on the special editions, 97, 98. And that's when I was in high school already here in New York City. And that's when the buzz started. People were like, hey, man, these new Star Wars movies, what are they going to be? And the word prequel was being thrown around.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand what it was. Honestly, English was new to me, and the whole terminology for like movie buffs was still relatively new. My first experience of it was going to a local public library, and this young adult librarian guy, and it's like a whole bunch of high school students gathered around this stupid old school computers with big monitors, and he's downloading something off the internet. Guys, you have to imagine, of course, 1999, there is no YouTube. To see something moving on screen on your computer was a novelty. Forget about resolution or quality. And he's downloading this thing for like 58 minutes, and students are there. And we're like, what is this? What is this? He said, it's a new Star Wars trailer. And the way that it showed up was highly pixelated. You couldn't even tell apart facial details, but you could see the general idea what it looked like. I saw that trailer, and I clearly remember seeing the double-sided lightsaber ignite, and we lost our stuff, man. We're like, oh, what is this? I can't wait. I don't care when it takes place. I don't care what it's going to be about. Just give it to me right now, man. It was, guys, Josh, you mentioned the hype level, how it was very, very highly anticipated. Living through both prequel and sequel hype prior to the release, I got to tell you guys, it's uncomparable. It is not comparable. Like the sequels, fans were like a little bit on the hesitant. It's like, hey, we don't know. It's Disney. It's a whole new thing. Let's see where it goes. Back then, no questions asked. It's the mastermind. It's George himself. People were on board right away.
It's a good point. That is one thing I saw. I saw someone in chat mention earlier, and I felt the same way. Which is when the Force Awakens came out. I mean, it was a huge excitement. I remember going to opening night, and the theaters were crazy and wild. But you're right. There was a different tone a little bit because fans were a little bit more like, well, this is new. This is under a new management. What are we expecting? There was more hesitancy, like still a lot of excitement. And I think a little more hesitancy, which is something that to your point, the prequels didn't really have. It was kind of like, hey, this is the guy. It's the same George you know and love. And so it's kind of a fascinating dynamic change that's happened in those eras. Mm-hmm. But I think equal for the prequels and the sequels, reaction was mixed. I would probably say, and Ben, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I felt the reaction to The Force Awakens was actually I would say mostly positive.
Yeah.
But it ranged from like, that was good to, like, nah, it was just, it was a new hope. But I found it to be overwhelmingly positive. I found it to be, it wasn't like we see today with the reaction to Last Jedi or Rise of Skywalker. So how was the Phantom Menace when that movie came out? What was the reaction there? What was it like in the community when you with your friends and your other family members? What did they think of that movie? Was it positive or was it equally kind of jaded as what it is today, or was for a period after Attack of the Clones and others?
Well, let me give you guys just a little bit of background setting. First and foremost, I got to say that honestly, when fans talk, we all talk about it from our little perspective, from our little angle, and we say, well, fans talk about the friends, the people that you immediately know, and that's what it means. So to lay the background for you guys, here in New York City, wherever you went, whether it was high school or library or shop, whatever, everybody talked about Star Wars. I mean, everybody. When the merchandising kicked in weeks before and during and after the premiere, you saw lightsabers everywhere. You saw it on every McDonald's, those little lunchbox or whatever. It was everywhere. The hype was monumental. And when the movie came out, I remember the general reaction, at least in my circle, was very, very negative. I tell this story all the time. When I was on my way on 42nd Street, Times Square, going into the theater, this guy was coming out of the theater with his two children. He looked at me. I don't know why. For some reason, he saw eye contact. He's like, "It is the greatest movie ever. It is better than Return of the Jedi." I don't know why. I had no clue what to anticipate for, but I had this sinking feeling. I'm like, what is this guy talking about? Something is terribly wrong here. I guess his response didn't feel genuine enough. Like he was hyping himself. And that's how I felt. Not only I was hugely let down, not because what I wanted, I didn't want to see particularly in that film. I just didn't know what to expect. It just didn't feel like a well-crafted film, period, Star Wars or not. And when I came out of it, in high school, in my close circle of friends, even myself, I was telling myself that it was good. I knew how I felt about it, but I was like, no, it can't be that bad. I just don't, there's something about it that I don't understand, that I need to fill in the gaps, that I need to go see it again. And it went on and on and on for a couple of years before I was like, oh, I just basically didn't like it. And what compounded the whole issue was not only that people were openly criticizing it, laughing at George Lucas, is just how much negativity people brought into it. It wasn't for quite a bit of time. It wasn't just fun being a Star Wars fan anymore. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. You guys don't like it. I don't like it either, but it doesn't give you the pass to like go, and call the director all these names. Okay, so he failed once. Big deal. And to be honest with you, when the second episode came in, I guess you'll have a round of questions around that one, but just to kind of like set up the way for that, I was generally a lot more interested, intrigued, and satisfied with episode 2. That was my take on it.
Yeah. That's fascinating. We will dive into that a little bit later. But I think as we all have kind of covered, the reaction to the prequels, the excitement for the prequels was extremely high. The merchandising, the constant news coverage was always there. It was a big deal. And again, for me, it was, it still is Star Wars to me. And so one of the things that we've seen in the last couple of years, as we think about from that moment Phantom Menace came out all those years ago to today, what we've really seen is quite a resurgence in the prequels, meaning revisiting those characters, revisiting those stories, expanding on them, enhancing them in lots of ways. I don't know, and we'll talk about this a little bit. When did it start? To me, I think the Clone Wars is the ultimate starting point of the rise of the prequel trilogy. The kind of attention and love it got over that period of years, where we got 7 seasons with these characters to kind of fill in the gaps that, fans like myself who had seen these movies when we were younger had kind of another piece of material in that realm. And it wasn't our first, we had several animated Star Wars Clone Wars shows. We had the Clone Wars animated movie that went to theaters. We had the Clone Wars from the guy who did Samurai Jack. I'm totally blanking on his name. Hyper stylized. Yeah, hyper stylized, really fantastically beautiful, over the top, but like really cool. I mean, I remember specifically like characters like Grievous, Mace Windu, just like going at it, like crushing. It was wild.
Yeah, I remember the Kit Fisto episode where it was underwater the whole time. So cool.
Yeah, and it's like, we went from that, and then we had this first kind of real animated canon show. It was kind of new to Star Wars, right? We had seen Star Wars shows in the past, going back to, going way back, to when they had droids. They had even a Christmas special, right, where they first showed Boba Fett before Empire Strikes Back came out. So they've animated Star Wars has been nothing new, but it kind of was for our generation. And I think prequels really came mainstream, loved in the mainstream with the success of Clone Wars, a show that I think really filled in the gaps, that provided a ton of additional context. And again, when you have 7 seasons, that spans over years and years, you become even more connected to those characters. You introduce new ones such as Asajj Ventress and Ahsoka, Savage, reintroduce Darth Maul. You make that era, to me, feel so much wider, so much more deep, that I think fans became really fascinated with that era. And for the fans like us who already liked it, it just kind of cemented its position. So I think you guys
literally grew up with them.
Exactly. And I think the rehabbing of the Clone Wars of the prequel era started there, because even fans who did not love the original films, I think certainly enjoyed what they were seeing in the Clone Wars, and especially with the final season. I don't think I found anyone who does not like the Clone Wars as a whole. There are people who don't like certain segments or certain episodes. I know, like the Rafa kind of storyline in the season 7. Some people don't really care for that. Kind of more nitpicky stuff, in my opinion, than actual legitimate problems. I think that really cemented the beginning of the comeback. And then Dave Filoni being involved so heavily with a lot of these Disney projects really is what led to him wanting to return those characters to our mainstream. But what do you guys think? When did the prequel era go from like everyone doesn't like it, it's a joke, right? It was memed on. I mean, there's hundreds of robot chicken sketches of making fun of the Clone Wars that are funny. I mean, making fun of the prequels that are funny. But it seemed to make the turn to like, oh no, this is universally loved. When did it start for you? When did you notice that? When did you see the tides changing of okay, now everyone loves the prequels? I have some theories, but I'm curious when you guys think, it started for you.
Take it away, Jim. Go first. Okay. It's weird because as you were discussing it, like I was trying to think to myself, I was like, when did I kind of notice that? If anything, I never noticed like a resurgence so much as I noticed how many people actually disliked it the older I got.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I distinctively remember, and I will always like cherish 2002, 2003, because that was Attack of the Clones. That was peak of the animated Clone Wars series. And I remember seeing, because I watched Cartoon Network all the time, so I got every single Star Wars toy ad imaginable for every kind of lightsaber. This one with light and sound. This one has a spring load in it. And this, and then the plastic ones you could just beat each other to death with. I still have like 4 of those somewhere. Nice. So I was just swamped in it. Like every Christmas, I got every Star Wars Lego set I could imagine,
Right.
So it was just nothing but Star Wars my entire life. And as I got older, so I pretty much, Revenge of the Sith comes out. And then there's pretty much nothing there for a while because that's 2005. And then what was it, 2009, 2010 when the Clone Wars movie came out?
The Clone Wars movie?
Animated movie?
I believe.
Yeah, because it was pretty late after that. Mm-hmm. I think then might have been the time when like the prequel
2008.
Okay, I was gonna say I think then was about the time the prequel resurgence came, but that movie kind of stunted it because I know when that movie came out, a lot of people didn't like it.
Yeah.
And then when the actual series came out, it started going.
Yeah.
So
I
would say about between 2009 2010 is when I would say.
I think Jimmy made a great point that I didn't really touch on, which I'm not sure I really knew that people didn't like the prequels until I got older because we weren't involved looking at, reviews. I mean, there wasn't kind of there wasn't like the YouTube community there is now built around reviews, first of all.
Yeah, we weren't on the internet. I was outside killing the separatist droids with a plastic lightsaber.
Right. So I think I think that's a great point I didn't touch on is I might have been completely ignorant about the fact that there wasn't universal love for those movies until I got much older. That's a good point. But Ben, you've probably lived this the longest. I mean, when did you think? I think I know why it changed, but when did you think it started? I mean, I think it was the Clone Wars. Do you resurgence.
Agree? So it was very, very interesting to kind of document and backlog the story of Star Wars as it went along. It felt like with prequels, it was, you could say, a decade of prequels. It's the Clone Wars wasn't as much of a resurgence as a continuation of George Lucas's vision, because he felt so burnt out of all the drama surrounding the films that he wanted to make, that he said, he wanted to take a creative break from things. He wanted to say, maybe I'll never return to this saga and never say it again. Remember his interviews where he said after episode 6, there isn't much more to tell. The Skywalker saga is over. But then again, he tackles something that he sort of starts with the prequel saga, and he says, well, hold on a second, there's a potential a lot more story here. And he starts telling it via Clone Wars. And it went on and on and on for years and years. And you saw children literally grow up into adults with that show. And it gets progressively darker and darker. And George starts experimenting with a lot more mature themes in it, which was fascinating to watch. So I would say that from 1999 to 2000s, early 2010, it was a decade of prequels. And I guess they naturally sort of started phasing it out, especially with acquisition from Disney in 2012. And they said, well, hold on a second. Let's refocus our ideas and let's go back and delve into the original trilogy vibes. Let's represent movies cinematically, even like Rogue One, a standalone film, which tackle and address that interest of the original 70s fans, right? So it sort of started with Disney. They snowballed, they brought back that aspect of it.
Yeah.
But I think the resurgence with Clone Wars, as far as 2022 is concerned, really began with novels. I'm talking about the canon novels. It's the last official Star Wars Legends books or one of the last that was released was Kenobi, right? And post Order 66. It's still sort of in the vicinity. So it's 2014, I believe it was released. So it's pretty close. We're still talking about this particular decade. And then the canon very smartly signaled to fans. First of all, I want to just clarify once again, Disney was so transparent from the start. Them and Del Rey and Lucasfilms Publishing said, look, we're not abandoning these stories. We're just shelving them. We're putting them on the side. George Lucas always had his very clear vision, what he wanted to do with the story. And these Legends stories kind of like enhanced his world, but he never considered them his true canon. And now they're saying, well, let's dive back into what George created via prequels and his Clone Wars series, because Disney has officially canonized it, because George Lucas's hand was in them. And they said, well, you know what, let's reintroduce that world back to fans, because we also are addressing new generation of kids, 5, 6, 10 years old. And they started introducing those novels. When you read something like Master and Apprentice or Ahsoka, and I'm pretty sure they got a lot of feedback, because, I mean, you slap a Star Wars logo on a novel, on a book, it's going to sell like hotcakes.
Oh, yeah.
But it's still a very good metric of where it is in terms of fan interest. And I'm pretty sure they gave him a very strong idea. It's like, hey, you know what? Even one of the earliest comic books that Disney very smartly has chosen to publish was a Kanan Jarrus, right? Kanan the Last Padawan, which was a 12-issue miniseries. Guys, I got to tell you, I was on board. This was back then when I was still collecting physical books. I was like, yeah, man. Yeah, give me more prequel series. So I kind of was noticing Disney's conscious choice to get back to it via smaller media, like comic books and novels.
What I think the key is, and you're right, Ben, I think that's when you start seeing the content that supports the era and fleshes it out. I think the key is who controls the narrative today. The YouTube space, the social media space, that's who kind of controls what the messaging is in the kind of public social sphere. And who runs that? The generation who grew up with the prequels right now. That's who's making the most content. That's the biggest Star Wars YouTuber on the whole platform, regardless of if you like or agree with everything he says. He is by far the biggest and the most successful and you know, a voice for a large segment of the community. And he is absolutely a huge prequel fan. Being Star Wars Theory. Star Wars Explained, most of the folks here outside of Ben, we all are prequel era fans. We grew up with the prequels. We make a lot of the content. So what is the content we make? It's biased towards liking the prequels. It is optimistic to the prequels. It is forgiving to the prequels. It loves those movies. And so we control a lot of what is said about Star Wars. So you've gone from an era where when the prequels came out, the folks who are my age, and it might be like how I am for the sequels, where it's like, nah, those aren't really my favorite, yada, yada, yada. You know, years from now, 10, 15 years from now, the people making the most amount of content and the most consuming content are people who grew up with the sequel trilogy. And so the tone there might be different as well. And I'm not saying they're equal films. I'm just saying there is a narrative control piece here that happens. You know, you kind of create your own reality a little bit. And I'm on here making YouTube videos as a prequel fan. So I'm part of it, right? It sounds like if you go on YouTube, which is the most consumed and watched media platform in the world, you hear the biggest voices universally loving one thing. And universally loving that era, it kind of changes the perception, right? Perception's of reality. So that I think was the big shifting point. You know, who had the mic? Who was controlling what was being said? I think that really changed the path of the prequels. Jimmy, it seemed like you were going to say something. I interrupted.
And because I find that so interesting, and it's cool to think about, because, you know, like you said, like 10, 15, even 20 years from now, like when 3 friends are in the exact same position we're in that grew up with the sequels, I think more often than not, they will not have to fight with the prequel lovers like we had to fight with the original trilogy lovers, because we came in like, we like the prequels, and they're like, they're terrible. I was like, I didn't say I hated the original trilogy either. I love both of them. I watch them all constantly. When the sequel fans come in, I'll be like, you like the sequels? Hell yeah, dude.
You think, you know, I have found, and even in a comment I was reacting to today on one of our more recent shorts, there was someone who was like, you know, I really hate what Disney's, you know, done for Star Wars. They kind of ruined it for me, which I hear a lot of that sentiment. And, you know, I understand it. You know, I get that. Well, I don't agree with it, but I understand like the impulse to be like, man, I had this thing I loved. It was kind of in its preserved form, these movies, these characters, and you've added things, and it's been subtraction, right, by addition. The more you added, the less I liked it, right, for them. And it's hard for them to then separate like, hey, I can still love those 6 movies and just disregard the rest. There are a lot of fans who struggle with that. And I think original trilogy fans had kind of that same response, which was, you know, they had these 3 really well-crafted films with their own vibes, their own, I mean, for you know, I recently watched the Boba Fett documentary on Disney Plus, and they kind of show in that a little bit the fever around those movies when they were coming out back in the 80s. And the fact that like Boba Fett, one of his first appearances outside of the Christmas special was when he marched in a local parade in George Lucas's hometown in California, and they let them wear the Boba Fett suit and Darth Vader walking on the streets, and like just the people lining the streets so excited for those characters. So you if you're a fan of those movies and you had that kind of perfect like moment, those perfect memories, and then the prequels come out and they feel like they've tarnished that a little bit. Like, oh, now that I know who Darth Vader is, he's this kind of scrawny guy named Annie. Like, what the heck is this? You know, I don't want to, as much as I try to be very positive, I also don't want to be so ignorant and blind that I can't understand why someone's first reaction to that would be like, dang it. You know, it's kind of like when people saw Luke in the sequels, and it wasn't, even though this was never my complaint with the sequels, by the way, I never mind how Luke acted in The Last Jedi. It didn't bother me even a little bit. Like, I think a hero who's been around a long time should have ebbs and flows in his character's beliefs, and like it would be weird if he was the same guy he was 30 years ago. But anyway, regardless, when fans saw their hero or someone they loved presented in a way that they didn't personally vibe with, it feels like to them it tarnishes that character. Like, well, now when I watch Luke in Return of the Jedi, I know he ends up with some old cranky guy who, you know, dies as a Force ghost fighting some screaming Kylo Ren, and I hate that now. So I want to be sensitive to that. But at the end of the day, there are fans out there who found Star Wars through these avenues, right? Who found it through the prequels like us, who found it through the sequels like these new fans. And so I think, again, who controls the mic 20 years from now will really shape our perceptions of the prequel trilogy as well, a sequel trilogy as well.
I wanted to add something to what you were saying. Yeah. You know, there's also this kind of fans that I've encountered, and they're generally in their, you know, late 50s and 60s, who are, it's, you know, this, we're talking about prequels and sequels, you know, and original trilogy. There are fans who only like the original film, and they feel that it's been reductive from that point forward. And they say, like, you know what? But they were the generation who weren't making films focal points of their lives. Like, okay, you know, this was my favorite one. I felt it was the purest experience ever from that point forward. It's like a conversation about Terminator 1 and 2, 2 being just bigger, bolder, better, one with bells and whistles version of part 1. And that's what a lot of those fans have experienced. And I think you tackled something very important here, that we shouldn't rush out and label those people. Say, oh, he's toxic, or he's stupid, or he just doesn't understand because he has a certain reaction to something. I think we can all sit at the round table and try to understand that A, we're all fans, and B, it only makes us more understanding and passionate about this when we understand where each one is coming from.
Yeah,
definitely.
I think that you can like we talk about, there's a way that to dislike something respectfully, right? There's a line between like, I don't enjoy it for A, B, and C, and frankly, I think it was poorly executed. And then there's like the kind of harassment that some of the actors got involved in the prequel era, and it was like, that's a major bummer. It's
and
bad
people,
for all the fans.
Come around also, that there's current generation people who are welcoming him back and saying like, we want more Jar Jar, we celebrate. We also have to remember that sometimes opinions evolve and shift. Not everybody's stuck solid in their written in stone kind of opinion. I told you guys, I'm a closet prequel fan. It's if I had a grief with these movies, and I still do to this day, with a lot of technical and execution parts there's a lot that I found to enjoy. How do I know this? I watched the trailer to Obi-Wan Kenobi and I hear that music and it makes my heart rate like just increase tenfold. Yeah. And there's something from back in the day, and it's not just musical, it's just a sonic experience. Something about those characters still touch you on such a deep level, despite the craftsmanship, despite how the whole ship sailed or crashed. There are moments in each one of those movies that I found that I come back to and I say, I guess I feel different about this now. We also have to take into account our opinions are fluid. They constantly shift and move.
Now let's talk about, where we are today. When we talk about like, so someone listening to this might be like, okay, like I get the sentiment towards the prequels might be more positive, but like, what do you mean it's getting a second wind? What do you mean it's returning? We have seen that through the medium of Disney Plus. I think Disney Plus has been really a conduit, a pathway to the prequel era. And I'm including the Clone Wars in that because to me that's prequel era, even if it didn't come out, right with the original trilogy. With the return of characters like, Ahsoka, Bo-Katan, with Kenobi being one of the biggest Star Wars projects of our lifetime, you see that Disney knows doing their market research, and they have entire teams dedicated to doing this. They have found where the popularity is, and it's with the prequel characters. That's where I'm sure they're selling a ton of their merch is from figures. I'm sure Anakin figures, Obi-Wan figures, Ahsoka figures are some of their, and they know that. And Ewan McGregor and Hayden Christensen in specifically are so loved by the community that, you can't help but continue to promote them on your platform. You want them to be drawn in. You want them to be focused on. Let's pull up Nick's question here, though. I like this question before we continue. Question for all of you. If you had a new friend who's never seen Star Wars, would you start them with episode 1 or the original? This is a great question. This is a really good question. Let me think about this for a second. Ben, do you have an answer off the top of your head?
I think Jim has an answer to that. He's already looking hard. He has an answer.
I do, because I've done this many a time. More often than not, I said, how do you want to do this? And I tell them, I was like, there's the chronological release where you can watch it, like timeline release, They're like, and sometimes they're like, well, I want to start with, what was the first one made? Let's go from there. Like, cool, original trilogy. Other times they're like, I want to just start at the beginning and watch it correctly. And I'm like, episode 1. Now, if they ask me like, hey, what do you think I should do? What's your opinion? Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's hard because I never know. Sometimes I'm just like machete order. No, I honestly think I would probably say, let's start with the original trilogy for a couple of reasons. And I think it's really the same reasons that Ben said in the chat. It's like, this is what started it all. It's not the best quality since it is now aged fairly. It's old, but you can see it progressively get better. Because for starters, the change in like, I don't even know what word to use. Like the change in like the cinematography from episode 4 to 5,
film technology
is crazy.
Yeah,
it's just in the 3 or 4 year gap there. It's just an insane upgrade And then you just see it get better and better each time. It's really cool to see it like that. Same thing with the Clone Wars. Like the farther into the seasons you go, the amount of animation upgrades is just wild.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a good point. I didn't think about, you guys both brought up. That's an interesting perspective on getting to appreciate the cinematic qualities as they went. I'll go because I think Ben already kind of put a little bit of the explanation. If someone asks for my opinion, because I'm assuming they want to know what I would recommend Release Order. I think Release Order gives you the desired story arc. It puts you, what's big for me is putting me in the perspective of the people who watched it in real time. Like it makes you understand what Star Wars was. These are the movies we saw in this order. Here's what came next, and here's what finished it off. And you can have those same kind of feelings, those same kind of like, okay, now that I know Vader, let me see, oh, it's Anakin, it's the guy back there. You can have that same kind of reaction we just talked about. And then you can have the same feeling for the sequels. Like, okay, now I understand why, if you watch it in this order, fans have the reaction they do. I think that's kind of an important cultural context to add to the film that I think you miss without it. And I would do one thing as well. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Keep going.
If I were to tell someone, and this is like my opinion, if they were really digging the first two movies and they were excited, and this is probably going to be overkill for a lot of people, I've become a big, like, Clone Wars is required watching for the prequel era, like the whole show. Now, if there's someone who's like, no, dude, like I'm gonna watch these 9 movies and like that's already gonna be a chore. Okay, you don't have to do that. But if there's someone who's like, man, I really want to dive into the Star Wars thing, I'm so excited about it, I would highly, highly, highly recommend you watch episode 1, you watch episode 2, you watch the Clone Wars, and you watch the 3rd movie along with the 7th season of the Clone Wars. And I think that's, like, to me, as like someone who's seen them multiple times, watched them 8 different ways, that's my favorite viewing, is watch them in release order, but include the Clone Wars. I love the Clone Wars in there. So anyway, that's just my perspective.
I can get behind that. And I was going to say, I think it's in a lot of cases, it's better for to start with the original trilogy, because a lot of the payoff in watching it that way is what happens in episode 3. Because you figure it out. Oh, wow, Darth Vader used to be Anakin. That was Luke's father. So how'd that happen?
Yeah.
So you watch episodes 1 and 2 and you're like, all right, here's episode 3. And like, I watch a lot of reactions to people like watching them for the first time. And we get like halfway through the movie and they're like, okay, so how does this go to that? And I'm like, you are about to cry for the next hour. And I think you get a better payoff of seeing their reaction to not only, obviously, first you get the I am your father and like, whoa, that didn't expect that. But then you see how it all plays out from him, playing a part in Windu's death and then going from there. It just blows a lot of people's minds. I think that's a better payoff.
If Star Wars wasn't so popular and everyone, even if you've never watched it, the chance that they don't know the twist is like almost zero, in my opinion. Now, there's people who don't. Oh, yeah. I'm not saying so, but if they didn't, if it was like an indie franchise where you didn't know the twist was coming, well, then release order would be kind of cool. Then chronological would be kind of cool, because you'd have no idea that little Annie becomes this ultra villain. And then he, like, his son, like, you wouldn't know that. And so that twist of like Anakin goes evil would probably rock your world. I just assume there's no way in today's that someone's been that removed. But if they did, it'd be kind of cool to be like, this is Anakin's like fall of a hero. Go ahead,
Josh. It's actually one of the points that a lot of guys my generation had. It's that we went into theater knowing where all the chess pieces on the board were. We know who Ian McDiarmid is. We knew he's a bad guy veiling to be a good guy. We knew Anakin. It took a lot of thunder from that. It's like you are in essence, it's an expansion of one single scene from one movie. You're telling us like, hey, I'm going to expand on that again. And a lot of us, you're kind of like watching a movie on separate levels, like where you're trying to intellectualize it, analyze it as a film, see how excited you're about the story. But partially was also like, hey, dude, it's like, you already told me the story. When is the exciting part is going to come? And it never came, because we already knew the story. It's like, we already knew that Anakin will become this guy. And honestly, partially why I answered this question this way, that original trilogy is the best, is that from my biased little, perspective with my mind, is that I would say that Vader in the original trilogy versus the prequel Vader Anakin becoming Vader. They're almost incompatible, and very justly so. You're saying that the Clone Wars animated series is basically an essential now,
Must watch,
because George Lucas not only fulfilled on the promise of giving us this rich story of his fall, of giving us the ultimate Anakin, which I think the Kenobi show needs to stack up against. It's absolutely phenomenal. But also the Clone Wars series in general gave me the excitement of storytelling in Star Wars, which I think has not been topped to this day. It's some of the best Star Wars telling ever.
It is,
like anybody should be watching it. If you're excited about Star Wars, you want to ignore prequels, watch the Clone Wars show. You have to.
And to kind of two follow-ups to chat here. I do wish that you could.
God, me too.
But they have on the official Star Wars website, there is a chronological watch guide, which is not as convenient. I did it that way when I did my rewatch. Because let's be honest here, I didn't remember what the order was, because some of those episodes are like random side quests.
Oh yeah, like you're supposed to start with like the first episode of season 3.
Yes, it's
then jump to season 1. And you're just like, why is this a thing?
So it is on StarWars.com if you guys want it though. I just want to call that out. If you haven't seen that, I know you can find it elsewhere, but Star Wars officially put it out too. Go ahead, Jimmy.
I was gonna say to the previous comment we had up that said you can't watch them in order because Padme names them. That's also, I think that's one of the harder things, because you got to think, if you watch the original trilogy first, you kind of get the spoiler for the prequels that Anakin becomes Vader. Mm-hmm. But if you watch the prequels first, you get the spoiler that Vader is Luke's father. So it's hard. I think it's a better payoff if you do the original first, because like the father thing is but what happens to Anakin when he becomes Vader is a shocker. And it was like
a monumental twist, And
I think it's one of my favorite reactions I ever saw was like someone who knew the character of Darth Vader, but didn't know that Anakin was Darth Vader. So when they're watching through the prequel trilogy, when he's knighted as Darth Vader, they're like, wait, he's Darth, what? And I was like, wow, I never expected that to happen. So I thought that was pretty great.
I will say, because I'm with you, Jimmy, and to chat, it's like you're kind of sacrificing a twist either way. It's like you lose the I am your father. I will say I am your father is probably considered one of the biggest, like, misquoted, but quotable cinema moments. So you do take away probably one of the biggest theater, pop culture references of all time. So maybe it is like you got to have the I am your father moment. Because that's like, you grow up.
It's also the one that's misquoted the most.
It is. Everyone says, Luke, I am your father, but it's no, I am. But anyway, regardless of how you say it, it's like a cultural expression almost. Like literally, you could have never that line, like other movies make, use it in theirs in mocking way, to make jokes. You use it in cultural. It is like it is an iconic cultural moment. And so it is true you missed that. Back to another point I will say about the Clone Wars. We talked about being required watching. As we're talking about the prequel era tonight, it, to me, to Ben's point, and things we talked about before, we'll repeat, it is like some of the best Star Wars we've ever gotten. And I was having a conversation with some family members. I kind of alluded to this a couple weeks ago, where they were talking about Book of Boba Fett and they were talking about Cad Bane. And I was like, Cad Bane is from the Clone Wars. And they were like, oh, I've seen that on Disney Plus, but I've never really felt like watching it. I'm like, okay. So I said to them, they're a little older. They have kids. It's a little hard to find time to watch. You have young kids. It's hard to find time to watch maybe 7 seasons. I'm saying watch it with the kids. Let's go. But they're young. So they're not quite old enough to get it yet. But when they do, I said, when you watch that, it's going to really expand, because they're very casual fans. They like Mandalorian. They like Book of Boba Fett. They're just enjoying it. They're having a good time with Star Wars. I said, when you get a chance to actually see, to literally see like all the context, all the world building, all the other planets, all the prophecy. Like there are people who don't like the Mortis storyline, for example, because like this is kind of weird. Like to me, and I totally get like why some might not like it, but to me it adds to the mysticism element of the prequels. The prequels, I said before, have a certain mysticism to them that I love. This certain weight of prophecy, this certain, like in season 7 when Maul is talking like a harbinger of doom, and he's like, you don't know what's coming. It's all, you're like, oh, what the heck? It's like this is like some apocalyptic, mystical, world changing. I love the stakes in those movies, and you have like Sauvage is this like, magic roided up, there's all this like magic. It feels more fantasy to me than the other films do that I love. You guys, I'm a big fantasy fan. So like to me, for some reason, the prequels, especially with the Clone Wars, feels more fantasy. Like it really leans into that a guy got cut in half and built himself into a half metal spider out of the, like, it's just weird, but like in the best way, you know, like to me, like you miss a lot of like the some of the coolest parts of Star Wars to me. So anyway, that was my little tangent there, but you just miss a lot the prequels have that the other eras don't. You know,
and even then, you know, like canon or not, it still can play into Legends too, which is great. Like you were talking about like the Mortis thing, and I'm like, you know, some people don't like it, that's fine, but to me, I'm just like, without Mortis, we don't get Abeloth. So
I think the Mortis thing is like, that to me is when Star Wars officially feels like a fantasy more than like a sci-fi, if that makes sense. Like that is the more
I can get that.
And I love fantasy. You know, I love sci-fi as well. I think
felt grating to me because it's once again, it's George Lucas with his midichlorian shtick. I'm like, don't explain the Force to me. Don't give it any shape or form. It's supposed to be ethereal. Like, I'm also a huge fantasy fan. One of my biggest movies, along with Star Wars in the 80s, growing up with, was Harryhausen's Clash of Titans, the original 1985 one, right? And when you watch it, those fantastical elements there, I'm like, okay, here we go. It's the only arc in the Clone Wars series, the only 3 episodes which I don't like. Not because how they're told immaculately well. It's because what they stand for. I'm like, don't do this. Don't go to that midichlorian route again. Why are you trying to express it and explain it in a way that it basically makes it what you said, from something magical and fantastical that only stays in the shadow and each fan gets the opportunity to interpret it? It's like, no, that's what it is. It's parasites in your blood.
I get you there. I understand your perspective. The imagery of like these avatars of the Force, like having this, I mean, it is, to me, it's the most like, even people who like hate the sequel trilogy and feel like it doesn't feel like real Star Wars. I mean, candidly, you can make an argument, even though I like it, that the Mortis saga feels like really weird. It's like Anakin's supposed to stay on this planet and keep the 2 kids in line. It's like, what the, you know, but I mean, I like that. I mean, to me, I like it. I'm just saying, like, that is the most bizarre little,
it really feels like it's like the one like actual like storyline episode that feels like filler, because it is really just so random.
It is random.
They're like, we're in space. What's this? Why am I in a different dimension? That's what it feels like.
I like the one of the things I've talked to you guys about a lot. There's a certain level of doom, a certain unease to the prequel era, because you know how it ends. There's a lot of energy, and I dig this up. A lot of tension, and I think the Mortis is kind of that. It's like this. Here's what's coming. This is all coming, and like I just love that kind of buildup of the prophecy of doom coming to its head. I love those kind of vibes where it's like there's this inevitability to it. It can't be stopped. Again, why I like Darth Maul's kind of like meltdown at the end of the Clone Wars. He's like, no, you don't get it. Like, we're all being played. Like, no one gets this. I was trying to bring Anakin over here to get him away. You know, it's like this whole brilliant. Yeah, I love Maul in that moment, because he's like, no, we've all been played. Like, this is checkers. We've been playing chess. You know, he's doing that whole. I just love that kind of energy to the prequels.
His story was definitely a tragic one. By the end, it's like he almost felt like a tragic fallen hero. He was also desperately fighting for something he was just swept under the rug by Palpatine.
Yeah, if anything, I would say like Maul is pretty much like the true Sith there, because he just kept wanting to come back and prove himself. I even like love how still like cordial he is, you know, like when Ahsoka gets him out and he's like, care to give me a fighting chance? And she's like, no, just go blow stuff up. And he's like, whatever. But I get the same vibe from that than I do with
Hallway Scene.
Yeah, Hallway Scene. But I get the same vibe with the episode where Fives figures it out.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And
I love that.
He's desperately trying to warn everybody, and it kills me every time I watch it, because I'm like, just listen to him. You could solve so much right now. And the fact that Palpatine literally goes, yeah, you know, oh yeah, it's all true, by the way. Yep, I'm the bad guy.
I do love that.
And
you're right.
You know that happened, and the fact that he's just like, everyone would not believe him. And
I love the conspiracy.
Burns my soul just thinking about it.
I love the conspiracy vibes there. I love, like, I don't know, I love that.
It's just written too well.
I like that a lot. Oh, I love the prequels as we're talking about here. Let's kind of wind down the prequels talk and open up to the week news. I think Ben had something he wanted to talk about with the prequels. Ben, you got a question for us? You got a question for the group?
Yes, guys. So we talked about a decade of prequels as I saw it, right? From 90s to the end of 2000s. And we had another decade of Disney leadership and trying to return to the characters from the original trilogy. Do you guys feel like we have exhausted our stories with prequels? I wanted to ask you, in regards to future films, shows, and books, what is the future specifically of prequels? Yes, we're getting Kenobi and Ahsoka of prequel era characters, right? But then now they're taking them into the future. But as far as returning back to those days, whether it's before, prior, or somewhere in the past Order 66, the dark times, what is the potential in terms of storytelling?
I'll go first, Jimmy, if you want me to open up.
Absolutely, go for it.
So I think, and maybe to give you a non-answer, I don't really want to see another story in that set of years. I don't need like more Clone Wars. I wouldn't mind to see a little bit between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones, which we are going to get in some upcoming novels. I think there's some intrigue there. What we are going to see next, I'll answer this in my opinion. This is just Josh's way. We are going to see Phantom Menace, like years leading up. And I do think I'd love to see a little. I think the Acolyte is going to take us there. That's just Josh's opinion based on speculation that it's at the end of the High Republic.
I agree with Josh's opinion.
And I would love, and everything we say here is like, we want it to be well executed. Like, of course, I don't want it to be like a crappy show, but I would love a well executed Plagueis story. He is such an interesting, important character, because young Palpatine is something we haven't explored a ton of in canon, right? And Palpatine, like, whether you love him or hate him, love that he came back in the sequel trilogy, like the planning, the foresight. I would love like a political thriller of Palpatine's rise to power with his dealings with Plagueis, his maneuvering politically to position himself there. Like, I want a young Palpatine, like HBO Max, political like maneuvering style show. Okay, you guys know House of Cards?
Yeah.
I want to see that, but with like Palpatine, not like the kind of comedy tone, but I want to see like this brutal political game to get him up to the top.
That would be fun to watch. In the off chance that never happens, I have a great book for you to read.
What about you, Jimmy? Do you want to go back to the era? I got something to share here in a second, but do you want to go back to the era, see more stories there?
I think yes, and I say that because I've talked with my roommate several times, because a lot, and I mean a lot, of the new canon books we've been getting take place between 6 and 7, and I'm saying like at most 5 years after episode 6. Not that that's a problem, because that was one of the big things they realized was like, okay, now that we have our established canon of what happens after, we've got a lot to fill in. So I understand that, but they haven't left that. Yeah. Now I'm very, very happy we are getting 2 prequel books this year, being Brotherhood and the Kenobi book. Fantastic. Also set really good times. We've got one before the Phantom Menace and the other one between 2 and 3. Sick. But I hope we get more of that between 1 and 2 and between 2 and 3 books, because there's not a lot of prequel canon books right now. Like, you think in Legends, you had like the Clone Wars series, so you had like Shatterpoint, Jedi Trial, the Cestus Deception, Dark Rendezvous. Fantastic stories, also great artwork. And there were really cool stories that led into what happens before the Clone Wars and during.
Yeah. And give you even more interesting context.
And like, because I have several prequel books from Legends that I have not gotten to read yet that always, catch my eye. I have Rogue Planet, I have Cloak of Deception, and like there are stories that take place, a little bit after episode 1 and before, and it's like all these little intertwining stories that we could get, not necessarily to fill in any gaps, but just to say, hey, this did happen, and it might tell a small story.
Yeah.
Like, I know Brotherhood's gonna fill in the business that happened on Cato de Moidia that we all want to know about. So like, that's awesome. But I just feel like most of the stories have been post episode 6, nowhere near episode 7, because there's like a 29-year gap. So.
And before Ben gives his answer, I will say to my answer, I will always, even if it's not what I wanted or what anyone was asking for, if it's good, I'll eat my words. Like, I'm open to good content. If it's good content, heck, it could be like an Uncle Owen farming book. If it's good, Like, so today I don't see the vision. I'm tired a little bit. Okay, I love the Skywalker saga, but I'd love to see stories elsewhere. Hundreds of years later, I'd love to see more visions. I'd love to see more just different, just fun and different. I don't need more prequels. It's so it's great to me. I love it, but like we don't need it. But Ben, what about you? Let's get this up here on the screen here.
Yeah, get this one on screen. Thanks.
Ah.
So I feel that one of my favorite books. First of all, I got to say, guys, again, I've spoke about my sentiment on the prequel films. I absolutely adore every single prequel era Legends novel and canon novel. They're dynamite. They're amazing stories. They are the answers to my questions where this is the kind of storytelling I wanted to see. Not in terms of the events of what happens, but that quality and gravitas and that kind of emotional impact. And just speaking on Palpatine alone, James Luceno wrote Cloak of Deception. It deals with Qui-Gon Jinn, and it deals with Palpatine setting up his deception decades before we see the first prequel, Phantom Menace. And on that topic alone, I feel like you could write 20 novels. And the reason that I wanted to bring this up, the MedStar, part 1 and 2, they're some of the best science fiction books I read, period, in or outside Star Wars. I keep reiterating that these are the books that don't get enough credit out there. And the reason that they're phenomenal is, once again, they demonstrate where you could take this huge, epic galaxy-sweeping event like a Clone War, and you could compartmentalize it. And you could pick a specific planet, a specific conflict, and specific Jedi or a character who is either entirely invented or is so minor that you could make them into something. Barriss Offay. Until these books came out, she was literally a nobody. She just shows up as a cameo on screen in the films once.
Yeah.
And before we see her later on in the Clone Wars, she's a no one. You read a book like this where at first you kind of like scratch your head. Well, hold on a second. Do I really want to read a story that doesn't involve all these major characters? And besides, you have to understand it, respect it from my angle. I'm like, why would I need more prequel era storytelling if I don't like it in the first place, right?
Sure.
It's a legitimate question. But once you read it and its quality completely takes hold of you, those are the books that turn you into a prequel lover. And you say, gee, you know what? I may not have appreciated these films before and might not still love them much now, but I'm grateful that they exist. Why? Because of books like this. And I feel the potential in the future of prequel era in general, is honestly infinite. It's as full of potential as they're willing to invest money in it, and obviously as fans are interested in it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a great point, Ben. Like we talk about a lot, and we'll talk about a little bit with our news updates. There are oftentimes novels coming out in the sequel era, and my first thought, actually, believe it or not, is like, cool. Like maybe it'll make me like that era a little bit more. I'm kind of hopeful that maybe there'll be some stories in there that I'm like, damn, that was a killer story. Like I didn't love. I have different kind of perspectives on those movies, but maybe I didn't love all of it, but I really did love, that story, and it made me connect to this character in a whole new way possible. So it's a great perspective.
Say we really only have like one. I mean, there's technically two sequel stories, but really only one that actually like takes place with the main characters, and that's Resistance Reborn. Fantastic story.
Yeah.
Really?
I loved it. It also helps that I read
I've heard a lot of good things. I haven't read it.
And that's the thing, because I read Bloodline first, the Leia novel by Claudia Gray.
Right.
And there's some stuff in there that is resolved in Resistance Reborn, so that may have been why I enjoyed it more. But like truly, like I remember most of that book, and I read it when it came out, and I was like, you know what, that was just a really good read. So like I really think the sequel trilogy could improve so much by adding books. It's a little hard though, just because like 7 and 8 take place like 15 minutes apart. But
something
that is a good point. That's a great point, Jimmy.
Yeah. It makes it a little difficult, but I mean, hey.
Cool.
You guys want to see the cover for the new sequel?
Yes, I do.
Let's do it.
If you guys are not aware, to those in chat, let me get the image up here. This is a really cool one. We have confirmed months back that we were getting a sequel era story with Luke and Han. Let me
Close.
get this up here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Lando.
Luke and Lando. Sorry, the double L's. Let's see if I can go ahead and get this. Why did I lose this? I
gotta say, guys, from a graphic design perspective, I was like, okay. I wasn't interested before, I'm kind of interested now.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah.
But they
Now
tell
you have my attention.
They tell you, Ben, never judge a book by its cover. Come on. What are you thinking here?
You know what? I love judging books by their cover. That's what makes me stay in Barnes and Nobles for
It's
hours.
true. It's true.
My
Here
boy
it is.
Lando, with his clock right there, standing, awesome.
Shadow of the Sith.
Shadow of the Sith.
I, first of all, really dig the color palette.
This would be a great poster.
This would be a cool poster. I gotta look. Like, you know what this looks like to me? It looks like this looks like someone's fan rendition of a Legends like sequel era. Like, it looks like a Legends novel, if that makes sense.
You have like a Western poster, like a retro
It's funny
poster.
you say that because the all the white space in the background. My first thought was the Legends book Scourge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It looks. I mean,
Kinda.
like, you have like an older Luke who doesn't look quite like the old Mark Hamill we saw in Last Jedi. We have a Lando who looks a little older, but not quite. It looks like a Legends novel to me.
he's got a little bit of a receding hairline there.
Yeah, and a mysterious Sith figure.
And that guy.
With a mask. And it looks to me like if I were to see this on the shelf, I'd be like, ooh, this looks like a new story. Now that we know where it is, it's canon. It lies prior to the sequel trilogies kicking off. I'll be curious what kind of story they can tell us. But I have to agree. I think this cover actually made me more excited for the book.
Do you guys want to speculate who that Sith character might be?
Yes, I have many a thought on that.
Is that hair?
It is hair.
Looks like.
A lot of people. So, how do you want to do this before I just vomit words all over the place?
Go for it. I don't care.
Go
Cool.
for it, shoot, man.
So, this
Darth
is
Harris?
pretty much like our first sequel trilogy book, even though it does take place between 6 and 7 again.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's how their story is supposed to take place. It is supposed to be revolving around them chasing Ochi of Bestoon, which is the story we got in Rise of Skywalker. A lot of people think that's him on the cover. I don't think it is. A lot of people have pointed out, and I'd be willing to believe it, that it's Darth Shaw, Shaa, who is a character that appeared in the Vader comics, who is around with the whole Darth Momin thing.
Okay.
So
I am
like Sith
completely
cultist
lost.
kind of
This
people?
was mentioned in episode 9.
No,
Vaguely.
So Ochi was the assassin that when they got the dagger from.
Right.
So Ochi was a Sith assassin. He's been around a lot in the comics. Like, they've kind of filled his backstory out that he's like Palpatine will use him to do hits, which is what they said in episode 9. This character was not, though. This character was not introduced in the movies.
Yeah, so this Sith
Oh,
character,
okay.
this Sith character is being speculated as Darth Shaw, which is a character that showed up in the Vader comics. Now, the story that's being told, Lando mentions it to them when he appears in episode 9, where he says, yeah, Luke and I went all over the galaxy looking for the Sith Wayfinder, and Ochi of Bestoon had one, and they are after him. So this is that story.
Interesting. Okay.
And I think this is going to be great because the Luke Lando dynamic is one of my favorite things from Legends, because they don't really interact a whole lot in the original trilogy. And I always found it so interesting that Vader and the Empire made such a big deal about Luke that when he shows up to and Leia's like screaming that it's a trap, every scene you get, you see Lando like trying to like squint, look down the hallways, like, who is this guy that everyone's obsessed with? Yeah, this one, Darth Shaw.
Interesting.
So we got a kind of a. So I think they're playing a lot with Sith cultists in this book, from what I can kind of surmise.
So not true Sith, but Sith wannabes, basically.
Kind of. That's kind of how I've interpreted it. Kind of like, who are these people on Exegol? Like, what were they? Were they real Sith? Were they like religious Sith, where they just were like, believing in like all hell Palpatine? We love this guy. He's got the dark side. I'll be curious how they play with that. It's a real darkness. No, to the dark side. A real kind of like cult avenue you can kind of go with. Like you kind of saw with the witches, the Night Sisters. How they had this kind of magical, cultish dark side stuff. You can maybe play with that a little bit here. And these are kind of people who've spawned in that. Well, I'll be interested to see what they do with it. It's a fantastic cover. I think it's an absolutely fantastic cover.
I would be interested if it's actually the young chap in his youth, Snoke. He's like, before I was traumatized, this is my clone version 2.17 that ends up in the tube because it's not successful. But hey, I'm there. It's foreshadowing what we're going to see with what happens with Ben, how he's being seduced by the dark side, and Palpatine's iterations of the body of Snoke, where he possibly wanted to kind of like take over with his spirit. That could be another avenue.
I'm down for that.
It's not a bad idea. And yes, this is not Ochi. We all agree.
Oh,
here.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
not. Yeah, no way.
I am surprised that Ochi's not on the cover though.
Well, this is definitely more interesting. So let's say I'm at the bookstore at Barnes and Nobles. I was there actually a couple days ago. You know, I'll be honest with you. Ben's completely correct. I judge a lot of books by covers. I'm like, that book looks amazing.
100%.
That's
Yeah.
got.
Oh yeah, just to say Luke and Lando, that dynamic. I want more of it. So like, I'm excited for this.
That's a good point. I like the Luke and Lando dynamic. You're right. That's a great point. So that was story number 1, Shadow of the Sith, a book I think that we're all planning to read at some point. I'm hoping
Definitely.
it's great. It's a great cover. You know, kudos to the artist. Great.
Say
cover.
because I was excited for him to because he was going to write the Mandalorian novel and that got canceled, which did.
Who's the
suck.
author on this?
Christopher.
Adam
Adam Christopher.
Adam Christopher.
And this was going to be his first Star Wars novel, was the Mandalorian one. It got canceled, and I'm very thankful that they gave him a different project in the place.
Nice.
And let's go ahead and share some of the other breaking news stories from the week.
Breaking, all right.
I say breaking loosely. There's not been anything there's been nothing that
I
crazy.
say breaking
but that's
loosely.
okay.
This was last week.
This is on the official Star Wars site, though. If you guys want to go check out more about the book, I think they did.
Oh yeah, there's a little excerpt out in there.
There's a little excerpt out. There's the beginning picture, so you guys can go read a little bit from the book.
That is
see
a
if you
big
like.
excerpt. Wow.
It is, yeah. So
All
this is
right,
new.
all right.
It came
That's
out
reading
yesterday.
news.
It came out today. It came out this morning. Yeah. So if you guys
Yeah.
are curious about this, go check it out. Read the excerpt. Great
Got some
cover.
videos to make.
We are all pro Shadow of the Sith cover. Good work.
Absolutely.
A fun
Snow.
story. A fun story, guys. Star Wars Celebration is coming up. None of us are going because we aren't cool. But one day when we are going, we could
One
go see
day.
the likes of Ahsoka, Palpatine, and C-3PO in the flesh. I got to talk about, let's go here. For those who go to Star Wars Celebration, I'm extremely jealous. I absolutely love, they don't have it here. I absolutely love, I'll pull it up here in a second if I can find it. The style of like all their like poster for the event, all of their kind of merchandise for the event. They're going with this really cool, you can see it here, kind of tannish. See if I can find it. It's super cool. I'll pull it up here. But I one day want to go to Star Wars Celebration. Have you guys ever had chance to go, or do you know someone who's been? I've never known anyone who's gone.
No,
to
but
go.
I'd love to go.
The closest I ever got, and I say closest loosely, was when it was it was a couple of years ago. It was in Chicago, right?
Okay.
So like technically,
Vaguely remember
I was very close to it. I could have gone, but I mean, I'm pretty sure when ticket sales went live like last week, like I saw Kyle Katarn say he's like, I was lucky enough to get a ticket, and I was like, yeah, because they sold out in like what 6 minutes.
Oh, I'm so jealous.
Yeah,
It looks
people
so
are
cool.
hungry for more Star Wars, man. People are excited. But post this pandemic, people want to see more celebratory kind of events.
If someone told me like right now, they're like, you can go to Star Wars Celebration, but you need to give me your kidney, I'd be like, where do I sign?
Here's the poster, by the way.
Ooh.
I love this poster. I was trying to find like the full version. I absolutely. So first of all, talk about prequel era love. We of course have Darth Maul and Ahsoka, but I love how they merge the eras here. Now,
Is that Kylo behind Maul?
what everyone's, I think actually,
I think so. Maybe.
So
I was
it's
gonna
Vader, Emperor, Maul, Mandalorian, Grogu, Ahsoka, Luke.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Okay.
I think what people have pointed out, not to be like, I think there's not a single. Oh, BB-8.
Oh no,
There
no,
he
no,
is.
no,
Let's
no.
go,
That,
BB-8.
that's
BB-8.
that's not the Emperor. There's a blue lightsaber coming out of his hand.
Oh,
you're right. Oh, that's Obi-Wan. That's got to be
Okay,
Kenobi.
It's got to be
It's gotta be
Kenobi.
Kenobi
The plot
with the hood on.
thickens.
With the hood on.
But
Also,
wait,
I'm
how about
loving-
the red lightsaber coming from the other
That's
side?
Luke's. Oh, that's a Vader's. That's Vader's coming up.
Oh, that's
behind,
Vader,
I
okay.
think.
Yeah, and then Maul's got both of his there.
Got it.
It's a great poster, though.
Now, I
I'd
gotta
love
ask
this on
you
my
guys a
wall.
question.
Yeah.
Out of the 3 main guests that are coming, I'm gonna read into it, okay? Just a little bit, just for amusement. Ian McDiarmid. We know that Anakin and Vader are in Kenobi's show. Do you guys see Vader standing right next to the Emperor?
Oh, I
somewhere
think.
in small segment.
You know what's funny?
Give him my
Yeah,
Vader.
they've done it before. I'd be cool if they did it again.
You know what's funny? Like, this is gonna sound really stupid, so I don't know if I should say this. But
Say
it
it.
never occurred to me for a single moment when we've talked about Kenobi that Palpatine could be in it. It's never even dawned on me. Like, I just have been so focused on like where Vader's gonna be used, because in Rogue
Right.
One, for example. But I'm like, it would be really cool to see the Emperor like lingering in the back, like, maybe even commanding, maybe even a hollow to the Inquisitors, like, you all suck, you're the worst, like something like that. I'm like, that would be good. I mean, that's all I need. That'd be fantastic.
Be like the slave driver, like do my
Exactly.
bidding, or
Exactly.
executing some of his plans.
or even him criticizing Vader for the Inquisitor's failure.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's some
like,
kind of
you know,
dynamic between Anakin.
exactly. Like you're like these Inquisitors. I told them to train under you, and they're a bunch of losers. You know, you're disappointing. Something like that. I'd love that. That's a great call out, Ben. I love that idea.
Okay, well, I want to add to that about Anthony Daniels. Do you think he'll be in Kenobi? I say that because we're getting a young Leia.
Right.
Oh, that's a good point.
Where is C-3PO at that point?
At that point, he is his master, and I'm back. At that point, he's on the Tantive 4 with
Bail Organa.
Bail Organa. He's so C-3PO and R2 are like kind of owned by Captain Antilles.
Yeah,
right.
Who is like big in Leia's life.
I don't like. We're talking about these really fun things. To take a step back, like I don't want the show to be like
right
cameo fest, but like it would feel, if it feels organic, like you would expect Palpatine to be saying these things to Vader. Like, go, let's do it. Like the guy's still alive. He's still awesome. Loved by the fan. Like it would be totally appropriate. Like what I don't like are cameos that feel weird. Like if Palpatine shows up on Tatooine, dual wielding sabers, you know, I'd be like, okay, like this is weird.
Obi-Wan.
Riding Cad Bane, you know, it'd be kind of weird. Like it'd be like, okay, I don't want to see that. But if he's there, like, yeah, I think that'd be fantastic. Maybe a tie-in. Oh, you know, I wonder if they're going to talk about any of the new projects. I'll tell you in a second. One of the big rumors. But we've got nothing on a droid story that's going to come out at some point.
I think it would be interesting if it was tied into a droid story. However, from what I've seen, I don't know if this is any confirmed or not. I don't think a droid story is supposed to be canon. I think it's supposed to be its own thing.
I'm here for it.
To Visions.
I want it to be like animated, hyper visualized, like over the top. Like if it's not canon, like go wild. Like make it be like this crazy balls to the wall animated like show. I want it. Let's do it. I'm here for it.
Yeah. I was going to say that what makes a cameo or a part of a story is just how it's presented. You know, if it's just thrown in there for 2 seconds, it always annoys me. I just had this little Twitter exchange recently with somebody. It's whenever they throw something, whatever issue, political or non-political, or character from previous Star Wars they throw in, I just feel it's disruptive when they throw it on screen and just leave it there. If you tailor it in, dude, you could bring Bail Organa. You could bring Ahsoka for all I care. But you could weave them into the story that's like, hey, you know what? They're an integral part of this show. So
that's a good point. And that's what I wanted to call out here a second ago. This is a big rumor I've seen throughout the week. I'm feeling very confident about this, which is the first trailer for Jedi Fallen Order sequel probably a teaser will premiere at Star Wars Celebration in May. I think that makes total sense. Like the timing on that makes a lot of sense. I think,
that's perfect.
And it was kind of bolstered by the fact that Disney this week released at their Legacy Sabers, the Cal Kestis Legacy Saber. So you can get this now at Disney World. So they've started promoting the character a little bit this month, had him come take pictures, the actor who did the capture, and then they're going to probably announce it. And we know the game's coming. So I think a teaser at May makes a ton of sense.
Man, let me tell you, like, I was introduced to Cameron Monaghan in the Gotham TV series as the Joker.
The Joker.
Yeah.
So when it was shown that he was like, hey, he's going to play a character in a Star Wars game, I was like, oh, every time.
He's so fantastic. He's awesome.
He's incredible.
Yeah.
I really like the if I would have been at Disney World and they had this Legacy Saber, I would have bought it. They didn't have it when I was there. It wasn't released. I actually think the Hasbro Sabers are better quality, and I've watched videos, and I own a couple, as you guys know. But I love the Saber. I like the fact I have mixed feelings. It's gonna sound goofy. Like I love and hate that it's broken at the end. Like I love that, I like the OCD in me is like, okay, I really wish it was like a good clean saber, but that's not what it is. Like in the game, that's not what. Now you can make it that way, which I always would, but you know, in the game, that's not the character.
Did you guys watch the original Stargate SG-1?
No,
I've seen.
That's where I discovered the Janina Gavankar, and then when she was cast in Battlefront 2 video game, I couldn't believe that like she looked same. Like in a decade, she hasn't changed at all. I'm like, oh my god, it was so fun to see her because she has a very small, tiny role in another show, but then just being so hyped for this talented actress to come like and visit, you know, Star Wars universe. I'm like, oh man, I want more of her. Iden Versio, give me more. I hope she's in part 3.
Oh yeah, and that's the cool thing about it too, is because like, I watched when the Star Wars show was still going on YouTube. They had an episode where she came on dressed as Iden Versio, and they had the actor that played Del Meeko there too, and they played paintball. And Sam Witwer was there. It was weird, but it was just a fun thing to watch. And I think that's what's really important about, you know, when you're doing like video game characters like this, instead of designing a character's facial features, doing the motion capture for it is cool, because then if they can show up in other properties, it's the same person.
That's,
and it just fits,
you know? This live action. Yeah.
And yes, it does bother me that the lightsaber is broken, because I'm always afraid that I'm going to like cut my hand on the wrong end. I should be worried about the lightsaber end, you know?
I do want to call out, Nick's got a question here, which I think I could honestly think of like a show here about, because you talk about what are your favorites, Jedi, Sith, non-Force users, droids. I think of this question from like an easy answer perspective. There's like, I could say like, I think the Jedi are the most interesting, or sorry, the Sith are the most interesting, then I like the Jedi, then the droids, and then the non-Force users. But I would like to take this question and maybe switch it for a future show on like, what are the most interesting stories? Like, what are good opportunities to tell stories with these as the focus? Like, how can you tell a good Star Wars story where a non-Force user is the main character?
I would say, as a precursor, let's still answer this question, and then we could spin it for a whole show.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah.
I got my answers already pulled up because I answered this question a couple days ago. So, favorite Jedi, Cade Skywalker. Favorite Sith, the Darth Nihilus. Non-Force user, it's Geode. And 4 is Chopper.
Chopper, nice.
You laugh, but Geode is amazing.
Geode is amazing. I love
this. This is a hard one. So like, oh man, like you don't want to sound super vanilla. Like this is hard. So Jedi, you know, I go to Obi-Wan or Qui-Gon Jinn, right? Prequel fan. Those are kind of the two. But I'll say Obi-Wan.
Listen, I don't want you to worry about being vanilla. If it's your favorite, it's your favorite, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I'll say Obi-Wan. I'll come back on Sith in a second. That's kind of a non-Force user. I'll come back on that. Droid is R2. Growing up, I had the Lego R2. Like growing up, I thought R2D2 was the best thing. Non-Force user would have to be Boba Fett. Growing up, I just loved that character. You guys have done me talk about that. Regardless of if the show has lived up, I love that character. Although Din Djarin is kind of becoming really like the new Boba. Like he's kind of replaced that kind of archetype. So I love Din Djarin as well. Favorite Sith? I mean, it has to be. This is a really tough one because all the Sith to me are like do so much.
You're taking it too seriously, man.
It's got to be.
Don't worry
Darth
about
Vader.
being different. Just truly tell us your favorite.
It's got to be Vader, but like I think that answer would probably change. But it's got to be Vader.
And you know what? There's nothing wrong with it.
Vanilla, man. It's like who cares? That's
give it a month. I'll have 4 different answers for you.
Yeah, it's got to be Vader, but like you can make some really compelling cases for like Legends characters like Bane is really like a really interesting character to go on. But go ahead.
I'll give you guys a very regimented answer because it's always going to be the same.
Excellent.
Favorite Jedi, Luke. Always and forever. Respect. He is Star Wars to me. Favorite Sith, Exar Kun. Had this little funny, stupid discussion in my message group. Somebody was trying to prop like Palpatine. He's this. I'm like, bro, Palpatine is breadcrumbs. The old Republic, the golden age of the Sith era, Sith, they would just fart and destroy his empire. Snuff it away, man.
Not George's vision. Palpatine wins. Let's go.
Non-Force user, Lando. Every goddamn time, Lando. Funny. That's my boy. Nobody has more swagger or talent than Billy Dee Williams.
Hello, whatever.
Droid, that's the only a little bit tough one. I can't remember which one I fell in love with more, C-3PO or R2-D2. I'm going to suspect that it was C-3PO because he's the one who talked. And as a kid, that's the first thing you kind of respond to. Like you're trying to figure out C-3PO as the kid, especially when it's dubbed over with Russian, when you don't pick up on accents or, like a voice accent as they're trying to, enunciate particular parts of their dialogue. But it was definitely C-3PO because he was just so funny and stupid and doing his acting. I'm like, is he a butler droid? Like you were trying to figure him out, but you understood what he was saying.
Yeah. Darth Scourge is an interesting pick. I've only in the Revan book, Tied in the Old Republic, I think the only time I've read Scourge. I don't know if he's in any other media, but that's what I think of him as.
Am I?
He had a pretty unlucky ending there at the end of that.
Am I tripping here though? I thought 3 was non-Force user. Is Kyle Katarn not a Force user?
No, he is.
Was he just
Katarn,
really
he's a
good
Jedi.
with a lightsaber?
Jedi Master.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, it's all right.
Jedi Master.
Hey, it's all right. He was just like, hey, look,
Master.
I wanted 2 Jedi. I'm not going to sugarcoat.
I mean,
it.
hey, no, there's nothing wrong with that. I just want to make
Okay.
sure. I was like, wait, did I get that wrong? Am I confused?
Speaking of droids,
Oh,
we have the
my
Hot
God.
Toy.
Wait. What is this?
So this is a Hot Toy for the KX Enforcer droids from the Book of Boba Fett, the flashback into the Night of Look at that. Look at
That's
the down at the bottom.
Straight out of Terminator, and it's terrifying.
How cool is that? I mean,
Awesome.
how cool of a shelf display would that be? Really cool.
Now, does it bring the background screen or is it just like artwork?
I think they have like a little. Actually, I don't know on this one. Some deluxe ones do have background screens. I think this one will just be bland. I think it'll be empty. You'll have
That
to
looks
make your own.
sick, man. That is so
great.
Terminator Judgment Day.
Yeah, I love
It
that.
is.
I want to call that out though.
It's like you don't even have to mention it. It's like visual homage. They're telling you they're fans of.
Yeah.
James
Oh, yeah.
Cameron.
Yeah, this shot right here is 100%. Yeah.
They're like, hey, I know Bryce was in Terminator. Let's do that again.
Love this. Absolutely love that they're giving these. Like, it's crazy to me. I don't know. If I was a big like toy collector, like made big dioramas and I had endless money, I'd buy a bunch of these, like, and some Mandalorian, like, and have them like coming through. It'd be dope. Love
Yeah,
that.
I wanted to call out Ethan's last comment. He said he forgot that Kyle was a Jedi. That's totally fine. Like, I'm not hating or anything. I was just like, was he not? Am I wrong?
He is kind of like I get the sentiment. Like, he is a Jedi, but like it's different. It just is
Okay,
that kind of different.
That is fair because he was kind of his own thing.
A huge part of his life was so much outside of Jedi Order.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's easy to just lose scope of it. Like, oh yeah, by the way,
he
later
was the
on,
outcast.
Exactly.
he kind of joins in. Yeah.
In the continued merch sets,
Because we can't live without it. That's what we're doing this.
How
we
I
push
love.
merchandise.
Come on,
Disney shills 2.0.
come on. How
Heck
fun
yeah.
is this little diorama though?
That is
Like
dope.
These are
isn't that
these are
really
cool.
though. Like for like like.
I like the little quote at the bottom there.
Yeah, the do or do not. There's
Now
no
that's
try,
going to
yeah.
be an expensive minifigure.
Yes.
The R2 covered in mud.
Yep.
Can you zoom in on that R2?
That's
I gotta
so
say that's
sick.
got to be the most detailed R2
It
D2
is.
Lego piece I've
Yeah,
ever
that
seen.
that
It
is going to
so
be.
well painted.
Yep, 100%.
That's
I
dope.
love that. I love that. I like this one a lot.
It's
Big
fantastic.
fan of the R2. I really like this little set. It's a little expensive. It's like $60. I'm like, yeah, but it's
all
really
three
cool.
of these new sets are expensive.
Yeah, it's really cool there. And then I
Oh,
have the
it's
second
3
one.
different sets. Okay, the next one is the trench run.
Yeah,
Look at the
Oh,
detail
that is
on
so
that.
good.
and look at the little R2 peg. Dude,
That's awesome.
it's a good one too. Like if you
So
like,
detailed.
yeah, if you're
Wow. I might actually try to get that one. I think that one's cool. Do you have the third one on there too?
Which is the third one? Is it the?
That's the Vector.
Let me get that up. Let me pull that up real quick.
Yeah,
Oh,
because the Trash Compactor one's pretty cool.
Speaking of Lego Star Wars, guys, that game comes out next month.
Yeah, it comes out on the 5th.
Like it comes out in like a week. I'm super excited for it. Oh my gosh, it's like less than a week. You're so right. Oh my goodness. Let's go here. We'll go to
More money to
comicbook.com.
waste.
Here it is.
Yeah.
Oh man.
That's a fun little one, isn't it?
See, this is a great way to just collect the minifigures, honestly.
Yeah.
I really do like these little display things because you can put them on like a little shelf and show like different
Yeah.
scenes from the movies you love. I think they're a good idea. I hope they do more little dioramas.
And
They're cool.
it looks, I suppose in theory, the way that it's built, the walls could close in. You could like move those around. Those are all, flat studs. So you could
Yeah.
change the dimension of that.
So is the Ahsoka Hot Toy, are we talking about the one from the Clone Wars or are we talking about a different one than that? This one right here, because I love the one from the Clone Wars.
Oh
Ooh,
my
that's
god,
cool.
that looked amazing.
I had this pre-ordered along with the mall and I was going to pose them and stuff. I ordered them last January. I backed out. It's for both. It's like $500 and I backed out, but I had them pre-ordered. I can show you my account history. I'm definitely not going to.
Which says
But,
a lot about you. You're not a true prequels fan.
I know.
Yeah, I can't believe you, Josh. You're kicked.
Yeah.
It's great though, is it not? And I think they even pose them together in the last picture here.
If I had this pre-ordered, no way I'm like taking. Oh my god.
Wow.
I didn't even see that cape one with the poncho.
Yeah, and the little like hologram that it comes with. That's
Yep.
That's sick.
Oh, pain.
That is
Pain
so
every
great.
time.
It's great. and it comes with a little. I think it comes with it comes with a little Yoda, Anakin, and Obi-Wan hollows.
That's so cool.
That was my only thing with Sideshow figures. Like I wanted years back to start like collecting their toys. Like what really bothers me, they're amazing. I give all the credit to the artists, but they never get those likenesses like down where you look at them like, yeah, that's Harrison Ford. And
So
you see a lot
some
of like
them,
Instagram fans who like do their own sculpts. They look a lot more closer to the actor.
so some of them. So in this case, I think this one is particularly tough because they did it off the animated. The animated Ahsoka mold instead of the live action. I will tell you though, like in the Batman one, which I'm not to like shill Batman here, but like I think they nailed the in mask face, which is a little
that's
easier.
Close.
But like when you like, that's okay. The hair's not perfect.
That looks like emo Tobey Maguire.
But like
I would
these,
say this is good.
oh
yeah, that is fantastic.
Look at the leather damage.
Yeah,
like, on the mask. Like, this is like nailed. Which
episode of Clone Wars is he in?
Yeah, he's in.
He's
in the Mortis episode. You didn't see that?
Right. Yeah.
He's the bat. He's the big bat thing that he turns into.
He shows up in the end of that filler episode where the droids take that trip. You know.
No. Actually, he's in Rebels in that Sith temple with Darth Maul because he's
Yeah. He's the other Inquisitor.
So here's the combo. So what's interesting about this Darth Maul one, if they'll go in on his face here, they used the Phantom Menace sculpt for him. So he looks, even though it's the Clone Wars, I mean, to me, it looks way like Phantom Menace.
Yeah, that's just Ray Park.
Yeah, it looks just totally like that. And they include with this one, you get the Mandalorian tomb, which is really cool. I really
that's
they
awesome.
included that. So you could lock him up if you want on your display case.
Nice.
I really like, but you can see clearly it's not like they didn't try to match the animation. They just used Ray. Yeah, I mean, cool figures though. I love me some Hot Toys. Oh, come on, like you're up in the rafters. Fantastic, fantastic. Other exciting news. We talked a little bit on the channel about this week. Jimmy made a little breakdown here. Reportedly, it's a rumor, but reportedly, Patty Jenkins, who's doing Rogue Squadron, has been in contact with Michael A. Stackpole, who created the Rogue Squadron series, and has been working with him on the details of the script, which is exciting. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, let me send you if I can find it.
You know, guys, as you're looking for it, it's very interesting because remember the rumor back in 2014 when they started rebranding the books into Legends. There's a lot of rumor going about like, hey, you know, by the way, Disney's refusing to pay royalties to all these authors. I'm almost, and I don't think we still understand what's happening behind the curtains, but it almost feels like the initiative to do the Legends Essentials was to bring back these writers.
That's a good point.
It could be a part of them saying like, hey, look, we're renewing your license. You're going to get paid for your books. Maybe not with every single one of them. You know, unfortunately, some of them are no longer alive, but at least with the ones that are still big on the scene with sci-fi and fantasy, and they're trying to bring them back into the fold to write future books.
So yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, like James Luceno, Michael Stackpole, they could still give so much to Star Wars.
Oh, absolutely.
And here's the tweet Jimmy just shared. It says,
this is the tweet where that actually came from. And I think if you scroll down, we can see like when this was posted.
March 19th.
So this was still fairly recent. This is where all the articles came out of. This guy who went and met Michael Stackpole.
I saw this tweet. Yeah,
he told me he was highly excited about the upcoming Rogue Squadron, and assured me Patty Jenkins had been in contact with him early on. That's really cool. I love that. That's awesome. That's just a feel-good story. Made a short about it on the channel. Jimmy, appreciate it. This is a really cool story.
I thought it was cool because, you know, like Michael Stackpole is just a great guy.
It's very cool. It's
he
nice
wrote a very beloved series.
Yeah, this is great. Big fan.
That I will read.
Him responding to one of my tweets when I like posted the X-Wing tweet, and he responded like, "Hey, thank you very much." I was like, my heart leapt. I'm like, oh my god!
I've had Mark Hamill like 2 of my tweets, and I was over the moon.
Nice.
That's awesome. One thing I thought was really cool this week as well. Speaking of the prequels, this is not just the prequels. Someone put together a list of all the alternative posters, like all the not the mainline ones for each of the movies, and there are some fantastic ones.
Are any of them new for you guys?
Yes, one of them was. All the prequel ones I had seen, which I like all of them, by the way.
Right.
Although this one is a little kind of melodramatic, but I'm here for
like
it.
it.
I don't care. Yeah, I don't care. I like it.
Yeah.
And then I kind of like the cape one as well. This the episode 1. This is fantastic. The Anakin with the Shadow of Vader is fantastic. The new one for me, I'd seen Revenge of the Jedi. I had never seen the Empire Strikes Back one.
I actually have never seen this before either.
I had never seen this one.
I want to say I have, but I'm not certain.
Can I say something? I don't know if this is gonna like trigger you guys. I think it's the worst poster on here.
Yeah, it's just
It's kind of hard to see it.
It is. It's hard to read it. It's hard to see it.
The Revenge of the Jedi one is always like a fan favorite for me. I have a canvas printing of it.
Yeah, Revenge of the Jedi one is fantastic. It's one of the cool alternative ones. I absolutely love. I actually really like the sequel trilogy ones. I really like the Force Awakens one. I think it's a really cool poster.
Force Awakens one is dope.
But I actually
I'm a
love
huge
this.
Fan. Being a huge Drew Struzan fan, I just felt like the composition didn't particularly work for me. It was very, very basic. It just didn't go anywhere with storytelling.
I love the Last Jedi one. What about you, Ben?
The TLJ ones are all insane.
Yeah,
This
one's crazy good.
Yeah.
So the Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker, those posters were used for the cover of the novelizations. The Last Jedi poster is just so good.
It's really good. I gotta be honest with you. Like, I like the Rise of Skywalker one. Kind of. It feels a little more CG in the face up here.
I found a whole Twitter thread of someone complaining about how they just took a picture of an action figure and did it and said it was lazy. And I was like, dude, go away forever.
I love the Last Jedi.
No, actually, I would share that sentiment. It felt lazy to me. It's like it's completely digitized. There is no sense of depth to the painting, like where they're fighting there, the duel. And even the Palpatine one, it looks like a CGI Battlefront 2 asset.
Can I tell you the problem?
Like, you can't
next to each other, it's like no contest too.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Like, this one is so good. Like,
because like the Last Jedi one, it just pays homage to a lot of the original trilogy posters.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it does it just really well. I kind of like this one too.
The classic, the original Star Wars poster. Look at the W.
I know.
Sorry, give me 1 second, guys.
I like the W. I think it's kind of fun.
I've seen like the first trailer for Star Wars, like that where that line came from.
George Lucas, the man who brought you American Graffiti, now brings you an adventure as big as the cosmos itself. Star Wars, the story of a boy, a girl, and a universe. It's spectacular, light years ahead of its time.
That is literally like that is the voiceover that played in that trailer, and it's just like crazy.
You got to highlight this one. If we're talking about that Phantom Menace poster, we gotta bring Larry Ashmore, man.
It's true. That's exactly.
Where did it go?
That's the homage. I love that's the homage.
It's just a tiny bit of story for those of you guys who are watching. He painted this before sequels came out, and George Lucas personally looked at it. They were supposed to be for Star Wars Topps cards, and he laid this one aside because he said, "Hey, look, it's a very, very good painting, but I'm trying to do something with this story." So what you see here in this painting is the unnamed mother of Luke and Leia. She isn't even called Padme yet, but looking at that shadow and looking for that inspiration, man, learning about this particular artwork years after we saw that iconic Phantom Menace poster. They were actually posting them here in New York City on the bus stations, on the buses. Yeah. The marketing for prequels was just phenomenal, man. I gotta say.
I love that George took that painting aside and said, "This is great, but I'm trying to do something with this," because that feels so much like those memes of like the text conversations where the FBI is like, "Delete that."
Yeah, like that's good.
That's
good, but too good.
Hold up.
I love the homage here. You see that's absolutely awesome. Really excited.
And it's also on the Blu-ray set, right, for 2011. That's the one I got. It has that artwork.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. Love it. One last thing. As we're wrapping up here, I want to make maybe a whole episode on this. I'm not even kidding. This week, they showed a bunch of like concept art for The Rise of Skywalker. There's like a ton of these pictures. I don't want to go through them all because I want to talk about them. But some of them are like, oh man, I wish they would have played with these concepts. And like, I know what concept art is. It's a lot of inspiring. It's a lot of like, get the juices flowing. But some of the ideas they had in here.
Yeah, what is that circle thing? That's interesting.
This like planet within a planet. This
like... That's cool.
There's some really cool stuff in here, and I'd like to maybe even talk about it in an episode. But you'll see like more like kind of what could have been exactly, and it's like they played with some like look at that. What
that is so cool looking.
I know. I'm like these.
That is some Doctor Strange like mirror dimension.
There's a lot of planet encasing planet. I think what they were probably playing with is the idea that like Exegol had like a whole network of stuff around it, like that they were building the army. I'm guessing that's what they were playing with. But
So that kind of
mass
like
destruction weapon.
Yeah, see like another one here where it's covering the planet. It must have been
maybe that was like the original idea instead of the Star Destroyers with like the super lasers, you know?
Like what the heck is going on here?
Go to the hit that button for me. Look at that, Mortis.
Oh, it's super cool. Just a lot of cool visuals in here. We'll have to talk about it in our video. There's just some really cool shots we can deep dive in here. Like, look at that. That is awesome.
That's Coruscant.
It's super cool. Super cool. What could have been? We will see. We will talk about this in another episode. There's like a ton of images that you see me scrolling through here. There's
that's really interesting. I like that.
And they have some really cool shots. Like some really cool shots in here. These artists are fantastic. You know,
it's honestly weird to me, you know, like being on the visual front of storytelling and studying that. To be honest with you guys, it's still, I mean, I'm not a professional storyteller. I have no clue how these movies are made, especially when so much budget is involved, how they begin to conceptualize them. But, you know, I have the first two books to the Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. I have those makings of. For this one, I just didn't care. That's my least favorite of the sequels. But when you look at those, I don't know why I always have the impulse like, yeah, that kind of looks cool, but aren't you supposed to figure out your story first and then visualize it? Like, it's a really weird backwards kind of like system of hacking away at it. And that's honestly, for me, feels like why partially the sequel trilogy feels so disjointed. It's like it's chasing the picture first and then trying to tailor the story around
what you're probably seeing here is the fact that there were multiple directors tied to the film at one point. And you're seeing probably the different visions of like, hey, when I was doing concept art, and I'll give you an example of that. We'll see here Kylo interacting with it ended up being, I think it was supposed to be like the Eye of the Weebish Bog or whatever, which was the dude on top of the giant baby.
Yeah.
But they must have played with the idea that Kylo consulted with some Sith avatar that never made it in the film. And this is probably, so you might be seeing some of the first directors work in here.
So one of the first books talks about it, the Force Awakens, and they have like J.J. Abrams kind of, because it has like text, and they were talking about the behind the scenes making of the film, and he was saying that they hired a concept artist early on in the project to trying to visualize what this movie is going to be like.
Yep.
So they were basically like brainstorming ideas for the film. I don't know, man. Once again, I'm not anyone to question the way that it's supposed to be done. I just wonder whether that played into the way that the movies came out.
So amazing shots here. But you're right. One thing we can, I don't know if we all agree on, I think the visuals had some really good, the sequels had some really good visuals. They had some really good visuals at certain points. Yeah. And that might explain why. They probably put a lot of time into it and it looked great.
Oh, I agree.
Well, guys, we are an hour and 40 minutes in. I had a great time talking about the most recent news, the prequels. I have a terrible headache, so I'm calling it a night. But before we wrap it up, let's kind of have closing thoughts. Have everyone have a minute to talk about what are they doing in Star Wars right now? What are you excited for? What do you want the channel to know about? Let's go to Ben. Ben, what are you reading? What are you playing? What are you doing? What's going on in the channel?
First of all, fellas, once again, Jim, Josh, it's nice to be back. Talk to you guys again. Catch up on things. It's always a pleasure. Genuinely, it's just I love talking about Star Wars with you guys. What I'm playing right now is Horizon Forbidden West. I finally got into it. I slacked off in the original game, just finished playing that. In terms of Star Wars, again, taking a little bit of break, but I'm just going to kind of like close this podcast on saying, yes, the resurgence of prequel era content is real. I'm fully behind it, like sincerely behind it. I'm so excited to seeing Hayden Christensen back on the screen. I'm so excited seeing Ewan McGregor back on the screen. I just honestly, I can't help but to feel excited and not hold my reservations anymore. Like I really want, like, because I understand a lot of fans. Like I saw a reaction to this trailer, and one guy, that reactor that I know, he was crying, he was in tears. Like, man, it was such a long time since Star Wars felt good to me, and not just good, felt special. And we all know that. We digest a lot of Star Wars. We talked about it on our channels, and a lot of it feels kind of like consumery and kind of like off the conveyor belt. I want the show really bring us to a point where it's not just Star Wars and it's good again. It's like, like we gasp. Like it's of that such quality and gripping force and energy. They're like, holy crap. Star Wars is in it again. Like the world stops for a moment with all that negativity, all that crazy stuff that's happening around the world, and we're like, oh my god, we're celebrating Star Wars again. That's what I want. This is where my thoughts are. My mind has been swirling around that trailer. I just want it to be really special.
I do too.
Yeah,
that's a great point. Good call out.
Let's see. Star Wars wise, I'm trying to kick myself back into content mode because I've been slacking and I really want to get back to it. So I'm planning videos for some reviews. I got some comics and books to deal with because Josh and I still have a lot planned that we kind of fell behind on that we really want to kick into gear, and we'll get to that. There's no rush. Playing wise, I'm playing Elden Ring.
Yep,
of course.
I got that as a gift from a very kind fellow, Josh. And I started playing that, and I was like, it was nice to play something that, to do something that wasn't Star Wars related, and get me ready to rip my hair out because that's what those games do.
It's not easy.
No, but worth it. But
we were closing in on the 1,000 subscriber mark. We are floating around there right now, so I had to celebrate a little bit, get some.
We hit 1,000 subs for about 15 minutes, then instantly lost 5.
You'll
but
get there, guys.
It happens.
We'll back up there.
Right.
I will not be fully opening the champagne bottle, but I definitely will. 300,000 head.
There we go. 300,000. We'll buy.
Guys, think about it. Think about it like this: we only have to do what we just did for 300 more years in a row, and we'll be at 300,000. Jimmy, that's it.
Oh, perfect. Yeah.
I mean. By then
that's how math works, right?
Yeah, exactly. By then we'll be like, who knows what the Star Wars will be?
Yeah,
we'll be living Star Wars. We'll be in it. It'll be vlogging. We'll be like with our lightsabers, like living the best.
I can just, what's up, guys? Live from Naboo right now.
Hey guys, out at Naboo, out at Mustafar, checking out where Anakin famously got.
It's really hot right now.
Really hot.
If my phone melts, I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's great. You know what's funny? To wrap it up here. I have both Elden Ring and Forbidden West, and they are both great.
Yeah.
They're both
fantastic games.
All right, boys, let's wrap it up. Thanks everyone for stopping by. We love you. We appreciate you. It's good to talk to you guys on Thursday nights. Until next week, Lego Star Wars coming out. We're gonna talk about that here in a second. We're gonna have to play together somehow and have some fun. All right, guys. Thanks so much. We'll see you again very soon.